Okay, guys, we're going to continue in English because our next speaker is also English speaking person. Ryan is going to talk with us about customer research and how to do it the right way. This is something that I've been talking about for a long time. I will even touch it in my presentation, but how to do it the right way. That's kind of the most important question, and how to don't suck in those interviews. So before we get into it, Ryan, my man, welcome
Hey,
to GTN Webcom.
yeah, thanks for having me. That was a nice lead in for me. You know your audience. I'm like, perfect. All right.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, look, I had a conversation with Stacy a few days ago. I think she's doing interviews with all 10% that are named by LinkedIn as rising stars of marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
she asked me, what do I think about ChatGPT and all those things. And I said, like we marketers like to go to the new shiny things and objects, even though this is the bigger thing. I see it basically as, when we have an internet now, it's AI empowering all the things that we do. But I said, I feel old because I like to go backwards and kind of go to the customer research and talk only
Yeah.
about that, because that's the only thing that will make me better at what I do. Sure, AI will make me, do some things more strategically. It will be a shortcut for some other things, but
Yeah.
they won't get to know my audience instead of me, right?
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
And based on the research, basically we will give them insights that they can feed the AI.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Couldn't agree
Uh,
more with that.
cool. Before we get into that, maybe you can try to share your screen,
Yeah.
just so we check that off the list. Okay, everything is cool. It's over here. I'm gonna get lost from the screen,
Okay.
and you go do your
Yeah.
thing.
I'll burn through these for your timeline. I think I can get through them quick. Um, so my name's Ryan. Everyone. I run Content Lift, and as Nemanja mentioned, I help businesses with customer interviews that just don't suck. And I think they're the best tool for really understanding your customers. There's a lot of different types of research out there. I won't get into them, but there's different methodologies. I think these are the most powerful. And the reason I think that is, if you don't understand how and why buyers in B2B especially are making decisions, then you can't influence those decisions. What I'm showing you right now is borrowing from a methodology called Jobs to Be Done. I'll let you Google it, but if you want to talk about it more, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll give you some more thoughts and resources there. But it's a way of just figuring out how and why people buy things. And the reality is, most B2B, most marketers and salespeople, they spend their time at that end state, high intent. That's where we put most of our energy. The reality is, buyers make decisions weeks, months, sometimes years before. They start to think about how they solve problems so much farther before they get to your solution. So you need to understand that process. How are they systematically making decisions about their business and the solutions that help them make progression to solve those problems? Because if you don't understand that path, well, you're in trouble, because you're going to lose. You might not lose tomorrow, but you will lose eventually. And that's why I like this meme here, because they're in ninth place and they think they're winning. The reality is, though, markets are not static. Things change. There's macro and micro factors that will change how buyers see you and your solution in the context of their business. And even we just talked about Chat GPT is one thing. AI has blown up in the last few months. Look at what's happened with tech layoffs, the banking crisis. Like, there's all these things that impact how people see things. So you need to understand how these things are impacting your solutions and your business. And I think customer interviews are the deepest way to get at these pains and their thought process around how and why they buy. So what is it? Often when I talk to people, I get the sense that they think it's just like this nice friendly chat. And it is. It should feel like that when you're talking to a buyer or a customer. You want them to feel like they're in this nice safe space where they can talk about all the things you want to talk about. But that doesn't really help you, because you won't be able to take consistent answers around a research objective in that sample, and then build out themes and patterns that can help you make decisions about the business, especially for your go-to-market strategy. So I look at it as it's a structured conversation grounded in a research objective, and I want statements of fact, behaviors, and actions. I don't want hot takes and opinions, or at least I'm not trying to grab those out unless I'm doing maybe a case study or some testimonials. Those will come out naturally. But what I want is, what are people doing? How are they acting? How are they making decisions? How are they evaluating things? How are they progressing to the next stages of saying, I want that thing and I want to spend money on it? Why? That's the stuff that we want to get out of a research interview. So it's not a friendly conversation. It's going to feel like that. But our objective is actually an investigation, turning over stones, finding patterns and themes, coming to a conclusion about what we're seeing in the market, either from our customers or from buyers in market. I break it down to 5 parts for a customer research interview. So we want to choose the type of interview that we want to have, because there's more than one type. We want to set objectives. What are we talking about and why? You only have 45 minutes, maybe 30, maybe an hour if you're lucky, but every minute counts. And we want to make sure that we're focused on the things that we want to know, especially when we go back to look at the data and start pouring back through the interviews. If we have a slate of 10 interviews, they're all an hour, there's 10 hours to go through. So we want to make sure we're really fine-tuned what we want to learn in those interviews and not too broad. Who we want to interview, what is the type of person, what is the role, what type of business model, what size of company. All those things provide statistical relevancy, and we want to make sure we have those fine-tuned, apples to apples, as much as possible. We want to find these people, and then we want to conduct the interviews. So I work on buying journey investigations. That's the core focus of my work. But there's different types of interviews you can have to inform different parts of the business. There's sales audit, which is sometimes called win-loss or close-loss audits. And we're really just looking at the sales motion here. So if you are, you do complex sales cycles, that is a really good one to learn how you're going to improve the rates of your closed ones. There's churn or win back. You hear that a lot in SaaS software, or people on retainers, right? Businesses that have retainers. Why are they leaving? How can we get them back? What's happening that they're moving on to something else? There's user UX. So if you have some type of product or some type of really deep productized service, how are people moving through the product, and where are they getting stuck? Where are they hitting friction? Where are they having problems? How can we make it better, the experience better? Brand and identity is what customers and in-market people perceive of solutions, either yours specifically or solutions like yours. What is their interpretation of what you do and why? Customer discovery would be evaluating new markets for entry. Product teams do a lot of this work typically. But if you are looking at going into a new market with your solution, how do you enter into that market? And how do buyers see your solution in the context of their business? And then finally, buying committee. So again, if you have a complex sales motions with lots of stakeholders, sometimes with enterprise companies, there's 6 or 7 people involved. What do they all care about? What are they looking to evaluate? How do you influence them? These are all different types of interviews you can have that influence different parts of the business as you're trying to build them out. So objectives, how do we set them as the next step? Well, if we choose our interview and we want to sort of really narrow the focus, push that lens down to get a better sense of what we want to understand, we can look at the data and the intelligence gaps that we have currently. We can look at our OKRs or KPIs that are faltering or failing or not meeting them, especially the mission critical ones, right? So how do we get information to help improve those and move the needle there? This is a big one, debates and disagreements or politics around who the customer is and why. I've been seeing this one for 20 years that I've been in marketing and sales. People debate all the time about what customers care about. And a lot of it is usually opinion and conjecture. It's not fact. So maybe that's going to really figure where we want to move. We want to focus the dial. And a lot of times I think start with sales, I find, because they have concerns with quality of leads. The conversations they have aren't tracking. They're not closing the deals they thought they were going to close. Well, why? What's happening? What's the disconnect? So those could be objectives, things that really help us narrow down our objectives. And when you have an objective, you want it really specific in the language. Asking, trying to figure out if someone would pay for a product or a service, or just saying, I think our sales process needs work. Well, those are too broad. They don't really tell you anything about what you want to learn. What you want to do is really figure out what do you want to talk about, what do you want to learn, who you want to learn that from, and what you're going to do with that information. So here's an example instead of what they pay for this. Does our ideal buyer face challenges in this business process that they have? So maybe in their sales motion, we want to understand the challenges they have going from here to here. And then maybe there's a product we can build that can support that, right? We're looking for the trends and patterns and themes. Or maybe we have seen that our high value leads take 3 times longer to close. Can we shorten that cycle, right? Can we lower the cost of acquisition? Maybe you can't, but you want to try and understand if you can. Those are very specific research objectives. So again, the type of person, part 3, who we want to interview. We want to interview the type of business. We want to figure out what that is, the person within the business we want to talk to, and they need to fit the research objectives. So let me walk you through what that looks like. If I wanted to talk to, say I'm doing a product interview or I'm doing a buyer research interview, right? How they systematically look at sales solutions from a marketing and sales lens. If I talk to a software DevOps lead that oversees 100 engineers, and then that same slate of interviews, the next interview I have, it's a hospital IT director who oversees 5 engineers. They'll have some similar problems, but their models of business are so different, and the problems they deal with will be very different, right? That doesn't help me with statistical relevancy. So when I'm looking for ways to leverage sales and marketing ideas, I might start getting separate ideas of where to throw the dart. It's not going to help you. I want consistency. I want apples to apples as best as I can. It's never going to be perfect, but the closer I can get that sample size of who I'm interviewing to have very similar psychographics to firmographics, I'm going to get much better data to inform what I'm going to do in my sales and marketing. So a better sample would be a SaaS DevOps lead with 100 engineers on their team and a SaaS CTO with 20 engineers. They will have much closer problems and challenges and pains and their things that they want to achieve over that first sample that I showed you. Fourth part is we got to find these people. Easiest way is if you have a CRM like Salesforce, HubSpot, you're using Google Sheets, doesn't matter. If you have a list of people you're working with, that's the first place you start, because then you can figure out, okay, who are the people that fit this research objective? Am I comparing apples to apples? If you don't have a list of customers or you want to go out and find people maybe who aren't your customers, you can get referrals from networks. It's a big one. I've done that a lot. Social media will have people in market who are very vocal about the types of tools they use and the things they work on. Networking groups, so Slack groups, Discord groups, Reddit groups, LinkedIn groups. You can find people there. I use a lot in my work paid panels and user groups. So these are services where they aggregate populations of people who do different things. It could be sales managers that work in software companies for a headcount of 1,000 people, and they focus on IT. I can find these people for a paid fee and fill in the slate of interviews. They might not be my customers, but they mimic my ideal customer. And finally, places like Capterra, G2, review sites. A lot of times people will publish their information publicly that you can maybe reach out to them and see if they'll talk to you. Finding people to speak with if you're doing a cold outreach is often one of the hardest parts. Even if you have customers, it can be the longest part because people are busy. They have other priorities. Even if they want to help, other things are going on. And in today's world, people are really anxious, or they're very they're worried about getting put into a sales call, to be honest. So when I reach out to people, I'm very transparent. I tell them it's not a sales call. Here's what we're going to be talking about. Here's the research objectives so you get prepared. Here's how long we're going to be talking. Here's the method we're going to be talking. And I will often personalize, right? If I can see something that's specific to the research, said, I saw you worked at this company. You worked on this project. I see you live here. Hey, we know this person. All those things help in increasing the odds of getting someone to talk with you. Last part is you're going to conduct these interviews. What I tell people is And for any of you that does podcasting or is in an environment where you're talking to people a lot and interviewing people, you might even notice this yourself. If you have a massive list of questions, a laundry list of questions, it actually detracts from the work you're trying to get done and investigating what, how, and why they buy, because you stop actively listening to answers and you focus on the questions. It sounds counterintuitive, but what it actually distracts your brain from hearing what the person says. So I always say stick to objectives and themes from that core objective that we set out. You know, crafted a few points of discussion, right? And stay in that lane. And finally, one question at a time. Don't ask like 3 or 4 questions. And an example of that would be, tell me about the first time you used our product and what did you think? Those are 2 questions. So their brain is going to try and answer both or only answer one. So those are some tips and tricks of answer when you're conducting interviews. I'm going to show you some other ones here from real life interviews that I've done. Were there any anxieties or concerns you had as you're talking to them about sort of how they talk about what they did?
Price.
Okay, walk me through why. What's the issue with price?
And when I looked into everything, it appeared to me that this was going to take some of the workload off.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our main reason to go full on 100% with.
When you say take some of the workload off, can you just walk me through a bit of that? Like what is the workload?
Okay, I'll take you from beginning to end of what happens is.
Yes, please. That'd be great. Why is your most powerful question? You'll hear that a lot from people who do research. Getting to the why. There's books about asking why, right? A lot of literature on that. And the reason it's the most powerful question is it gets to motivations and behaviors, because people don't typically answer they don't say the things you really want within that first answer, typically. So you would use why as a way to get underneath that answer. Why is this happening? Why did you say that? The challenge with why is I do about 100 interviews a year, and I've done up to about 1,800 interviews in my career now. It can get people defensive if you ask them why too much, because it sounds like you're questioning why they did things. Why? Well, why? So if you'll notice in that video, I rephrased things. Walk me through that. Help me understand. That's really interesting. Can you expand on that? Get to the why, but rephrase why. That's like, it's a key part. It's just one of those really small interviewing skills. If you can learn that, you're going to see such a dramatic impact in the answers you get from people. Next is, I mentioned this before, I want actions over opinions. I want facts, I want stories, I want narratives and timelines. I don't want hypotheticals. What if, should we, could we? It's too subjective. The reason I want all these things is I want to be able to compare these stories and narratives and timelines. It's for statistical relevance, right? Because I'm going to be start mapping these interviews and overlaying them to see what is the average things that people are doing. If you ask someone their opinion on something, you might get 7 answers. If you ask someone about the actions they took, you'll start to get consistency.
Yeah, I mean, between 2017, so we started in 2017, and we were just like super busy with sort of like the initial load of work that we had gotten just through our own contacts. And then, yeah, like basically we were just like go all the time. So we had a really crappy like 1-page website for the longest time. It was probably just like a 1-pager. And yeah, and so really, it was really on like early 2020, like COVID hits. And then a couple.
So what I'm writing down right there is 2020, because I'm starting to get the timeline.
Of our clients had sort of like slowed down their spending in those early weeks. And so if you're okay, like now's a really great time. I can take a breath and focus on marketing for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, yeah, it seemed like a good time to do it.
So what did you do? So you have the thought, okay, so clients are slowing down spending. I need to get more in my pipeline, or at least get some more thought process. I think content marketing can help. What did you do next?
Right. So, I think the first thing I did was I actually went to a different firm to do,
So I'm getting the timeline. You ask me, what did you do next? What happened now? What is the thing that happened right after this? I'm getting the journey they took from that thought process of this pain sucks to eventually, hey, this thing is going to solve that pain. And I'm getting the length that it took. Because if I can do that with 7 or 10 or 12 customers, you're going to start to see the average buying journey filter out. What are they doing consistently? How can I influence that as a marketer and salesperson? That's the trick when it comes to actions and opinions.
Yeah.
Just a bonus slide, I would say organizing the data. So how can I take all these interviews? Well, a very common approach that 101 research is something called content analysis. It's great if you've never done this work before, and it really involves just re-listening or watching or rereading if you get everything transcribed. And it's pretty easy to get things transcribed these days. And you're just highlighting themes and patterns from answers that all correlate to all those objectives we set a few slides ago. And I'm just grouping them into summaries. Researchers call them codes, codifying, right? It's just finding the patterns. And then what you can see is how I do that here is I might have one question that I've asked, and then in the italics is the answer they gave me, and then in my notes is how I'm summarizing that. Very, very simple and straightforward. Does not have to be complex. They mentioned before, research is expensive and can take long. It can, but if you're just getting started and you want to find some quick wins, this is a really easy way to get going. Lastly, just a real life example of a company I worked with. Rewind, they're a SaaS company here in Canada. They're about 8 years old now. They were bootstrapped for the first few years, and they raised about 80 million USD just around the start of the pandemic. They're mostly inbound sales with partnerships as a channel. And what they did was they acquired a GitHub backup solution because that's the sandbox they play in. They provide backup solutions for SaaS products. And they figured, okay, we'll plug this into our product portfolio and the sales should take off. It did not take off. And we wanted to understand why. So what we did was we interviewed a bunch of their customers. We got a better definition of the ICP. We got a better definition or a better sense of the go-to-market strategy and how we should position the product. So from there, we built out new personas, new sales enablement materials. We redid all their ad copy for paid search and display, revised all the product landing pages, all the marketplace stuff, and you can see the ads that we changed here, where it says don't waste developer cycles to maintain backup scripts versus like what the product does. We got that right from a customer interview. We just dropped it into the ad and the landing page. That's all we did. And because we heard that story over and over again of like why they were buying the product. And installs doubled within the first few weeks. This is Ahmed. He was the product marketing manager at the time. We didn't do much, subtle shifts, and boom, the installs doubled within a few weeks. That's why I love customer interviews. Like it's so powerful. I don't think people realize how powerful it can be just to go and talk to a few customers and iterate into your marketing strategy within a day or two and start seeing results. And that's it. How do I do for time?
You did great.
I tried to go like,
just in time. That's great and great presentation. So
thanks, man.
Thanks for sharing the insights, and I love how you got the audio inside it.
Thanks.
That's I didn't see anybody doing it recently, so
I'm doing more of that now. I'm trying to show people like how I do it. That's actually one of the top questions I get. Is like, so show me how this works, right?
Exactly. I mean, I'm listening to you and thinking about my speech afterwards, and I have a sort of like an example from the recent call with a client of a client, right? To see how it actually started, and when I tell those information to the client, he was like, "Oh man, I didn't know that this is exactly how it happened. I had no idea that so many things happened before that."
Yeah, I hear that all the time. I've never not done a project, and people who've been working with their ideal buyers for years, they always learn something new. 10 out of 10 all the time.
Exactly. Okay, I think you show people a lot. We'll definitely send them a link to to your course education. I don't know how you call it, but
I
it's
call it my
definitely
I call it a guide, DIY guide, how to run
guide.
research interviews
Yeah.
that don't suck.
That's actually the best of three. Yeah, the guide, because it actually guides you. You know, I'm directing people to it. And recently, a guy came and told me, I don't know if he bought it or not, but he came and he showed me like, man, I went through these things. I saw what Ryan is talking about, and I'm like, I'm so what did he say? I'm so horny on those things that I'm thinking about switching the career, but it probably will pass in a couple of days. But at the moment,
No,
it got me
wow.
so pumped that I want to do this.
That's so funny. Yeah. I mean, I love it. That's why I do it. But one of the things, you're gonna be talking about the 95% I think that aren't ready to buy, right? And that's the key part of doing this work is you figure out that whole journey, right? How did those 95% turn to the 5%, and how do you map it all out? And that's why people get excited about this stuff, and I see it, right? Because once they start doing it, that's the reaction. Like, holy shit, it's like, I can't believe I have all the answers now. Like, to an extent, right? But they learn more than they ever known before, and you start seeing things in ways that you hadn't seen before, and you start making better choices about marketing and sales. So yeah, people get excited about this work. So I get the feeling.
Exactly. I mean, and especially if you do the things that you do, connect it with the go-to-market strategy, and
Yeah.
show them actually what can they do with the research.
Yeah.
It gives them, it actually empowers them with things that they need to actually go and execute.
Yeah. 100%.
Perfect, my man. Tell the people when they can find more information about you.
Yeah. I'm probably like everyone else. So I spend an unhealthy amount of time on LinkedIn. So you can find me there, Ryan Paul Gibson. And then my company is called contentlift.io. And we help people do this either for them or we help guide them through it. But I'm always around, right? And I mean, some people, I answer every DM I get. So if people want to reach out, I'm always happy to help.
I can confirm that, and kudos to you for those things, Guy. I recommend you connect with Ryan, check what he's all about, and feel free to reach out. I mean,
Yeah, always.
every person that has been on the webcom is approachable, and they are willing to help if they can with what they can.
Absolutely, always.
Thanks, and I mean, see you soon, and hopefully see you here in Novi Sad offline sometimes.
Yeah, or I'll just get on a plane and fly over and meet you for coffee.
Exactly. I mean, we'll organize the offline event, so who knows? Maybe we'll host you for it.
Love it. Thanks, man. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye bye.